Welcome to the very first episode of Young Married Christian. What are we doing around here? We are on a mission to see a gospel-centered home made available for every single child in the foster care system. And in this episode, you're going to hear Debo talk to Jaron Myers.
My name is Jaron. How can I help you today?
Jaron is famous all over the internet. I think he's got over 1 million followers on TikTok.
You don't have to follow me for very long.
He had a video, a Chick-fil-A Rap, go viral a couple years ago. I think it had like over 75 million views on Facebook.
I think you saw this video for a reason.
He literally blew up a car in that video. Sorry if that was your car.
I was excited to hear all his different bits and skits and things that he's done.
I don't have a day job.
And one of the things that stood out to me was when he did a first date with a girl in front of a live audience.
You gotta be adventurous to do that.
I can't wait for you guys to hear how that turned out. You're probably gonna pee a little in your pants.
Like, I have a bad taste in my mouth just thinking about it.
One of the interesting parts of this conversation, one of the things that I got a lot of value from, was hearing Jaron talk about a strategy that churches can take to engage their communities
The lock-ins, the dangerous games.
by partnering with entertainers and comedians.
And just be embraced by the love of people and the love of God.
He also talks against hustle culture. Instead of working to rest, working from rest, which is a very interesting take on the Sabbath.
Just slap some lavender on that, all right?
Hold on to your prayer beats, Tiffany, because we are young, married, Christian.
So stupid.
So we almost got faked out with Taco Bell earlier.
Today. We did.
We thought that was James' secret.
Which is a fun bit. That's a really funny thing if you say we're going to this like local place and then you go to a taco. That's a funny bit. I would have respected the heck out of that, you know?
And he's like walking us everywhere, like acting like he's on maps.
He's like, yeah, I'm mapping the way to this local. You guys are going to love this taco place. Okay, so, especially their potatoes. Oh, they're like cheesy potatoes. They only here in Orlando. And, you know, and then you're hyping it up and then you walk in. That's hilarious.
And it was a Taco Bell cantina. So you're like,
Yeah, you're right. Oh, you're like,
so
oh,
this
wait,
is
oh,
fancy.
this is... Is that what fancy Taco Bell is? Taco Bell Cantina?
I mean, yeah, I guess.
The only other one I know of is Vegas.
The cantina.
So it's gotta be Taco Bell fancy if
Yeah.
it's in Vegas.
There was a thing that McDonald's tried out so it was just Indiana, Kentucky only. It was a McDonald's diner.
Why would they do it in Indiana, Kentucky only?
Because we will eat anything. So
Because they were like, you know what these people do? They did a date night option.
It was. You sat down at the table.
I don't believe
You had a
it. I don't
telephone.
believe it for a second.
You would call the server, and it was like Steak and Shake, 50s diner style. And they had like a full menu. Like you could get like a meatloaf or a roast.
You would
beef
get a
or-
McMeatloaf? Is that what you're telling me? You would order a McMeatloaf? That is disgusting.
Okay, so the question is this.
Well, hold on. Here's the thing.
I gotta skip over that because I don't want to answer it.
No, here's the thing. Is that, let's say, I don't even believe they had meatloaf on the... Here's what I know happened, okay? They did not serve a meatloaf, okay? It's just that you were trying to think of a fancy dinner option. You were like, what do fancy restaurants serve? And you went, they had like a meatloaf. Like, you couldn't say like they had like a fish. They had a steak. You went, they got a meatloaf.
Look, meatloaf was on the menu once a week at my house. So
At
that
your
I just
house?
go to that. I go to that. I go to
That's
meatloaf
fair.
and I go to Salisbury steak.
Have you had Cracker Barrel's meatloaf before? Have you had Cracker Barrel?
I've had Cracker Barrel. I usually get biscuits and gravy.
Oh, you like do, okay.
That's my go-to.
So what's the question?
Outside of Taco Bell and McDonald's, maybe that's your answer.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite fast food restaurant other than Chick-fil-A?
Okay, so I actually don't eat Taco Bell or McDonald's anymore.
Kudos to you. Nothing against Taco Bell or McDonald's.
Oh, everything against them because like, dude, it hurts my body.
But you gotta survive in college. You gotta get through.
That's true.
You know,
That's
dollar
true.
menus.
I eat a lot of Chipotle. I prefer Qdoba over Chipotle. But the Chipotle's across the street. And then, you know what my favorite one is? Panda Express.
Oh.
I will eat Panda Express every day.
Okay.
straight like so. Right now they've got a steak and shrimp wok. I'm not even paid to say this stuff. I'm just out here like, listen, Panda Express is where it's. I've become a regular at my Panda Express.
I think if you look into the camera while you're saying it, though, it might become something you get paid for.
Panda Express. Panda Express. Are you doing the background music?
No, I was trying.
Oh, go ahead. No, hey, do some background music. I'll do a Panda Express commercial.
Okay, here we go.
Do you want good cuisine, but you don't have the time for it? Panda Express. Express.
Ooh, that was good. That was
Panda,
good.
I'm gonna make sure to say Panda Express yourself. Is that a thing? Can we? Is that? Will I get sued? There's so many things will I get sued for that?
I'm thinking the same thing in my head, honestly. I'm like, we've already mentioned too many things. So we'll go to something that we know.
Debo, for you to get sued, they would have to hear this podcast.
Hey, and that would be viewership. We'll take it. We'll take it.
What if the only people that listen to it is Panda Express headquarters when they're like trying to like put their lawsuit together against you?
We're like, who are the 5 people that listened to it? Oh, it was Taco Bell PR, McDonald's PR, the guy who came up with the McDiner idea. Yeah.
The creator of the McMeatloaf.
Just making fun of everything.
No.
McLovin actually was one of the viewers too.
Yeah,
He's like, I feel like I should
the
get on
actor that
this.
played it. Yeah, he was like, "Well, I feel like they're gonna bring me up," and then he listens to that part, and he's like, "Do it."
I think that your Panda Express song could get as big as your Chick-fil-A rap.
You
I think
so?
it has that potential.
I think that I should do a Panda Express song. I agree. The only reason would be, here's the thing: I'm tired of doing stuff for these companies and not getting free food out of it.
Is that your ask?
That's what my ask from Panda Express. Panda Express, if you see this, I'll do anything for free food.
So when your video went
Yeah.
viral with Chick-fil-A,
Yes.
there wasn't a, hey, you can eat free once a week, you can get
Well,
as many,
so
like you get an extra nugget every time you go
an
through
extra.
the
We're
drive-through.
gonna toss in a little.
And you're like going through the drive-through as many times just to get that one
8
nugget.
times to get it. Yeah, because that's
got
how
8
frugal
piece.
I am. That's how frugal I am. Is I buy 1 8 count for my girlfriend, and then we got to go through the line 8 different times to
Like-
get small fries each time.
2 gallons of gas.
But a free 8 count.
I would like 1 8 count nugget, please. And then you drive through the second time. I'd like a small fry. So let's see, 4 small fries, 2 drinks. That's 6 extra nuggets, and then yogurt parfaits, I guess, for dessert.
Or the peach milkshake when it's seasonally in.
That is true.
Or the cookie.
Hey, listen,
Brownie.
they don't like me that much. We got to get off Chick-fil-A. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, so
Wait, they don't love you?
well, yes, they do.
Okay.
They like me.
I feel like there's more.
They like me, but they didn't know I was going to do that video. So I put it out, and then so we put out the video on a Thursday.
Okay.
That Saturday, I get a phone call, and from a unknown number to me. It was just a Atlanta number. I answered it, and she's like, "Hey, this is Kristen with Chick-fil-A PR. I just wondering where you filmed that video." And I was like, well, Kristen, you're calling me on my private cell phone number, so I feel like you know. And I said, so I'm going to hang up. I'm going to call you back in like 20 minutes. And she was like, oh, okay.
You hung up on the
Yeah, I hung up on
PR
Chick. I had to call my lawyer and be like, listen, am I going to go, like, are they going to sue me for like $50,000 or whatever?
That's like hanging up on God's knees.
Yeah, it's like ending your prayer with like, okay. It's like, no. Before I hung up, I said, okay, I'm going to call you back in 20 minutes. She was like, okay, thanks. And I was like, okay, amen. And then I hung up, because I know who I'm talking to.
Right.
And so, yeah, I called my lawyer friend and I said, hey, am I going to get sued for this? And so we had done all the things on our end to make sure that was a good to go situation. But we asked somebody who I guess it wasn't their permission to tell us yes. Does that make sense? So they should have, the person that I asked
Is the
should
homeless
have.
guy in front of Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, I just said, hey, you hang out here a lot. Do you think this is all right? No, I asked the people at that store, and
Okay.
they should have asked corporate, and corporate would have been like, no. But they didn't. So, but I did my due diligence of asking, and so I was covered. So,
And he was just a nice guy, And
I
so he
think-
was like, yeah, we would love for that to happen.
he was, yeah. He was like, hey, anything we can do to help your career. I think.
So he knew this was your career. This wasn't just like a dream, like you were just some random guy. Like, it's always
Well-
been my dream to do a rap in Chick-fil-A.
Well, at the time, I ate Chick-fil-A a lot.
They knew you.
Like that was so at the time I was treating Chick-fil-A the way I now treat Panda Express, where I was there every day. So
every time you say Panda Express, we just look into the camera.
Panda Express,
Parks and Rec style.
Anyway, so I was in there every day, and eventually he goes, "Hey, you're here like breakfast and lunch and sometimes dinner, like all in the same day, which means that you don't have a job." Like he's like you're either because I would be there 3 meals a day, and it's like for that schedule to work, I've got to be doing nothing.
And on Sundays you were starving?
No, I bought
Fasting.
two meals on Saturday,
Makes
so that on Sunday I reheat it. Obviously, I'm not an amateur, and so no, but he noticed I was there a lot, and he was like, "So what do you do?" We got in the conversation about like I'm a comedian, and he was like, "That's awesome." He was doing the whole community building thing, and so we got to know each other. He's like, "Anything I can do to help?" And then I was like, "Actually, maybe we could do a music video or whatever." So yeah, we wrote the lyrics, wrote the song. I came up with the idea in March of 2017, and then it came out in November of 2017. So a lot of people don't know the work that goes into these kind of things. So
wow.
So we recorded it in the summer. So I had a friend who's like an actual rapper make the beat, and then I gave him my lyrics, and he was like, "These are rough." I was like, okay.
Those were not the original lyrics.
Well, they are, but
Okay.
he helped me make them fit into a rap. Does that make sense? Instead of being like, I don't know, like I don't even remember what the original flow was, but he helped me fit it into in 2017, our rap was very on par with the trendy songs.
Yeah.
Now it definitely sounds like a 2017 song,
Which is okay.
which is fine because it was great for 2017.
It'd be nostalgic. It'd be playing in the clubs in 10 years.
I hope that'd be awesome. I don't. Anyway, so all the people in the clubs are like Chick-fil-A, like they love it.
I was thinking of the clubs attached to Chick-fil-A. It'd be like a different
Club Chick-fil-A.
Club Chick.
It's like the restaurants that are trying to do a different thing. Yeah, we put the song out in November, and we had recorded the video in October. So I sat on the video for a month, and then we put it out right before Thanksgiving because I figure people will be home on their phones at Thanksgiving. That's what you do at Thanksgiving is you just avoid your family.
And you eat a lot.
A lot to avoid talking. At Thanksgiving, what I do is I lean forward and say something controversial and then lean back and like let everything erupt.
Okay, so do you have an example?
Well, because you're like, is your family divided on stuff? My family was like, everyone's got real strong opinions.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Especially when it's like a election year.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
Like, do I skip this year?
Dude, so I don't. That's the years I lean in. Like I go to dinner and
it's
then
like WrestleMania.
Yeah, dude, I'm like eating potatoes and I'm just like, oh, yeah. I don't know. I just think they should take our guns. I'm just like looking around, and like, and it's funny. Your uncles are fist fighting. Your grandma's trying to smooth it over. She's like, I've got pie. And you're like, is it impeach cobbler? And it's fun.
we might have the same family. So with the whole Chick-fil-A, video, you go viral. You explode, and that's kind of your first break.
Yeah.
What happens after that?
At that time in 2017, Facebook views kind of mattered, and so now it's a lot harder to get those kind of views on Facebook. But at that time, that video ended up with like 75 million views on it, just in like the first couple months. In the first week, it got 5 million on my page, and that was a big number, and so I guess in my mind, I'd always, which I knew was going to happen when we did the ChickfilA Rap. I knew while we were making that, like we set a real car on fire, and I was like, I think this is going to hit pretty hard. Yeah. And so in my head, because I had been doing stand-up since 2014, and so that's 3 years kind of building up to this. And in my head, all I needed was a video to go viral, and then I would be on late night shows, and I would, then I'd be able to go out and do, anywhere and get people to show up. And what happened, there's a shift in the internet where having a viral video, one, it got shared by a bunch of pages, and so then I became like the Chick-fil-A guy, which is why they called me. They called me because they didn't want me to be the Chick-fil-A guy because they didn't want me to be like associated with their brand.
They don't want Chick-fil-A to become a Subway.
Yes, honestly. And so they didn't want to have like a guy, especially if I didn't work for them. So, but to a lot of people, that's the only thing they knew me from. So then it became a challenge of now I've got to get these people who have seen this video to know that I do stand-up and to know that I do other things. And that has honestly been what the last 4 years have been, is trying to not be the Chick-fil-A guy. And so, which is fine. I mean, but it's fun when people will see my new content and then they'll comment and be like, wait, is that the Chick-fil-A guy? And I get comment back like, yeah, I do other stuff. You know? So
like, I have a whole array.
I do.
You do.
Yeah, I do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I got too much sometimes.
Yeah, I feel like diving into your pages, your sketches are something that kind of stick out to me as far as very highly produced. Like the production value is phenomenal.
Thank you.
And I'm seeing this stuff thinking, oh my goodness, this is some of the best stuff I've seen. You talk about Chick-fil-A, your relationship with them. What about Dave Ramsey? Because one of your videos, I mean, you go hard into Dave Ramsey.
Well, so basically what I've tried to do is I have, because there's a few of these things that have cult followings. Dave Ramsey is one of the things that has a cult following, right? So my strategy was, if I can do a video that hits that cult, then they'll share it among each other, and that'll then... Because obviously they're the people who just like radically support something, so I'm kind of like, hey, why don't you radically support me? You know?
Yeah, I live in Orlando. I know the
Disney adults,
people.
Disney adults for sure.
Yes.
So if I can do things that are around that kind of the kind of person, that sounds bad, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean? Talking about like the kind of person who's already following something. Then if I can make something that is for them, and I can. And I, you know, my parents got debt free because of the Dave Ramsey stuff. So that was stuff that like I knew. And so
yeah, I did Financial Peace University.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, I know this. I'm a part of this. And it's a way of like, hey, I have that shared experience. I remember what this is like. This is a funny kind of poking fun at it thing. And I know that there's an audience for it already. And so, but that's the other side of that is I got 75 million views on the ChickfilA Rap. The Dave Ramsey thing, it hit hard in the Dave Ramsey community. A lot of people shared it in all those groups or whatever, and it got some views. But it's still it didn't become the thing where all of a sudden I was touring and doing this as like a great living, you know, and which was something that was discouraging in 2017 was now people, it's hard to describe this because people will associate millions of views with money. So they think that you got a bunch of views, that means that you're rich.
Oh, yeah, of
And
course.
so, which is...
I would think looking at your Chick-fil-A and just your Dave Ramsey alone, like, oh, this guy's, he's made it.
Right. You would think
I'm sure that's what anyone listening to this that sees the episode called Jaron Myers is thinking...
That guy's made it.
He
did.
He has humbled himself to talk to this.
I thought you were saying that this podcast was the peak. That you were like, whoa, he's on this podcast.
Whoa,
you know.
Yeah,
that's how they all act too. They're like, whoa, dude.
But that's honestly like something I love about this show is it to me seems like we're getting a normal guy in front of someone who is like oh my gosh. And, I was thinking about it earlier, like, wow, that's kind of how we are as Christians with God. And just like.
So in that analogy, I'm.
In the analogy, look, the analogy is not perfect.
No, I like that one. I like that analogy. We should use that.
But
I like that.
I think that's why these types of shows work.
Sure.
Like the Joe Rogan Experience, because people want to feel like they know you.
Oh yeah.
They want to feel like they can hear just a normal conversation with you. And so hearing something like, oh, I haven't got it all together after one video blows up. So what is life like for you then, if it's not just counting your money all day long?
Oh, I think that there is a part of the internet that sells that. The hustle culture sells this, work until you don't have to kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so there's the idea that you'll work 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week, and then one day you'll just coast. And I have found that, one, that's a complete lie. What they're capitalizing on, the way they're making money is you buying their course. They don't actually do anything else. But no, I think that people, the average person doesn't know the work that goes into a lot of what I do, and especially stand up just as an art form. People think we get on stage and just kind of talk, but they don't know that I have a story about possums in my show. It's a 10-minute story.
Okay.
And they don't know that for a year I did it as raccoons. And I was like, I got these pictures of raccoons on my phone. And, I tried to, and it was funny and it works. And then one day I switched it to possum, and the word possum is funnier than raccoon.
Because people can't spell it.
Well, not that. It's just got that puh sound. Like the word pickle is funnier than the word cucumber.
Like poo-poo.
Yes. Honestly, yeah. So people don't know the art of when you just switch one word and you're trying that out in front of audiences, and then you switch something and it works better, and then you do it the same way every time.
So you're constantly recrafting.
Yeah, people think that we're just getting up and telling stories, but we're telling stories in a very methodical, practiced way. And I practice a story to tell it like I've never told it before, because I got to go out and tell it 400 times a year.
Right.
And every audience has to think it's the first time I'm telling it.
And how is it being on stage and, let's say, 5 nights in a row your bit doesn't hit? How is that for you?
First of all, that never happens to me. I crush every time.
That's right.
No, dude, it's
exactly.
So
what is that process for you?
Oh man, so internet content's fun because we can edit it together, and you can like do your timing just right, and you can do all that. But I love stand up because you get on stage and if you mess up a word, you can't undo it.
Especially as a Christian comedian.
Yeah, if you say the wrong word at a church, they're like, what did he just say?
But honestly, then your cameraman just turns to the audience, gets that reaction,
and
that's it, guys. Lights out.
I'm like, thanks. Well, you don't even have an opportunity. They turn your mic off. Like you accidentally say a word, they're like, shut him down. No, I mean, but if you're speaking and you're like, I don't know. I have said Jeep or Ford Wrangler before, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like a word, you can't just be like, oops, it's a Ford Ranger, or instead of a Jeep Ranger.
You don't go back and correct it.
No,
you just keep it going.
You got to keep going.
And there's that guy in the audience thinking the whole time,
well, you can, but it messes up your whole flow. Like if you're talking, you're telling the story, and you're just like, yeah, the guy's in the back of his Ford Wrangler Ranger. It just messes up the flow. Mm-hmm. And so with online content, you can really curate it, and you can edit it and make it what you want it to be. And I love the potential awkwardness of live shows. Like I love the when I riff with an audience, or just or like I make something up on the spot. But nothing compares to, because the internet, you stack your jokes up and that the video is funny, but I don't get to see people watch my videos. It's actually super awkward whenever I'm in a room and someone's like, have you guys seen this guy's video? And then they'll pull it up, and I'm just sitting over here.
Yeah, that's me.
Dude, I'm literally just like, okay. And they're like, and you just hear, and they're like listening to the rap, and you're just like, and they'll watch it and they'll look up at you and be like,
do they ever ask you like, that was good, but you're here. Can you just do it for us right here, right now?
That happens a lot. Yeah, they're like, "Can you just rap?" Or some people will be like, "Can you do an acoustic version of the rap?"
Which leads us to our next segment. I'm glad I didn't do this, because I had talked to Ashley last night and said, "Hey, we're having." We got Jaron in town. We should invite him over to one of our friends' game nights.
Oh, gosh.
We don't tell him who he is,
and then we just play it on the TV or
we
whatever.
Play games, and then I say, you know what, there's this hilarious video I gotta show you guys. And I start showing them videos of you, and just see how long it takes them before they're like,
I was on not a bachelor party, it was like a birthday party I went to in like December, and we started talking about Chick-fil-A because I like their business model. So I was talking, and this one of the other guys was like a guy who owns businesses, and we were talking about like, here's why Chick-fil-A is successful. And so we're just talking about Chick-fil-A, and one of the other guys in the groups is like, oh dude, you would love this song I saw one time. And I was like, oh, really? And like he's like Googling, he's pulling up the Chick-fil-A rap. He's like, oh, it's this rap, like you're gonna love it. And he watching, and I'm just like, oh, cool, okay. Because here's the other thing too, is that there's another Chick-fil-A rap. One of my friends, Shama, did so if I'm at my house and I say, Alexa, play Chick-fil-A rap, she plays his song, okay?
Because his
has Chick-fil-A rap in the title, but
I see. Whose is better?
Well, mine.
Okay,
but
I'm glad we got the right guy.
Yeah, he was like, "Oh, we just looked up Chick-fil-A rap and accidentally booked you."
This episode is just called Best Chick-fil-A Rap Guy.
So Shama did a Chick-fil-A rap, and I'm always a little worried when someone's like, "Oh, I'm gonna pull up this Chick-fil-A rap. You're gonna love it." That they're gonna pull, and because I can't be like, "Oh yeah, that's mine." And then they pull up Shama, who is this black guy from South Carolina, and they're like, that's not you. Like, you know? So anyway, so he's pulling up the Chick-fil-A rap, and then it takes him a couple seconds. He's watching it, and he just goes.
and your look is.
And he puts the phone away. And I'm just sitting there like it wasn't, because you can't sit there and be like, uh-huh. You know, like
you don't do one
I'm
of
sitting
these.
there. I'm seriously terrified. Like I'm just sitting there like hey, it was weird. Anyway,
but you can't be more terrified than the blind date scenario where you're literally in front of an audience.
Yeah. First of all, I thought one day I'm gonna tour and do theaters. Right. That was it's been a dream, still is a dream. I would love to tour and do theaters in different cities. When I was 19, I had this dream of doing a theater tour. Where, like, as much as I love stand-up, the thing I love about stand-up is that it could fail. Like, I like doing jokes that, like, that's the fun of it, is when you're writing new jokes, right? So you're writing new stuff, you're testing it out, and the only way to tell if something's actually funny is if you say it and the audience laughs. Like, that's the only way to tell. And so I like whenever I tell a new joke and it doesn't hit, and I go, oh, okay, all right. So I gotta, like, try to rework that, right? So then I started thinking of different ways to kind of include the audience in different angles, and one of them was I was going to do a tour called Dating with Jaron, and I was going to do a whole dinner date night where I walk in on stage and I've got a table and I'm just facing the audience, and the audience is my date. So I was going to do a show where I'm just out there and I'm getting to know the audience and, you know, talking with them, asking them random questions and stuff. I was going to have and then I was like, maybe I could have a server come out, you know. And
wait, you had a server come out?
Well, I haven't done this. This was like in my head,
yeah.
Like the dream of like doing a theater tour. And I was like, okay, but then I can have a server come out and maybe he and I can like work out some like kind of skit type things. What if that girl didn't know that we were going to do that? And so that's how the blind date was born, was what if I just went on a date in front of an audience, but what if we didn't tell the girl I was going to do that? So
you got to have the right person.
What you do.
The right
yeah.
girl
Which,
here.
so we had a plan. So we went to this small theater. I didn't want to do a massive kind of room. It's only 50 people. And so, you know, we put the dinner tables there at the beginning of the show. And I told the audience the show starts at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And so a couple days before, I messaged this girl I'd never met before on Facebook. I really did, like, I just friend requested cute girls in my college town, because I was just like, you know, we got mutual friends, and you know, because I'm funny on the internet. This was 2014, 2015 that I actually became friends with the girl, like Reagan, who came to the date in 2014. In 2014, when I'm a college student, we didn't know the internet was as dangerous. You know, so we were just accepting friend requests as just kind of whatever. So anyway, she accepted my friend request. So we're friends on Facebook for several years. And then in 2018, I messaged her on Facebook and I said, hey, I'm going to this comedy show. I'm supposed to have a date. Do you want to go with me? And then she's like, sure. So
makes sense.
Right. Well, I think her roommate was like a mutual friend of mine. Like her roommate had done comedy.
So she was
and so she asked her roommate, she was like, hey, is this guy creepy? And her roommate was like, no, he's fine. And so that was, good. You know, it was all right. We actually found out that I had done a podcast interview at her apartment before, because I had done a podcast like interview with her roommate at their apartment.
Okay.
And so before I ever knew this girl. Anyway, so she walks to the venue. So she meets me there. I told her it started at 7:30. So the audience got there early. right? They get there at 7.
Mm-hmm.
I tell her it starts at 7:30. At 7 o'clock, the show starts. I go out to the audience, and I explain to, because they didn't know either. They bought tickets to just a normal comedy show.
Oh, so they thought
they were just going to watch me do stand-up. And then I walk out to the audience, and I was like, listen, that's not what's going to happen. So,
and I wonder, like, their thoughts. Like, did they have a reaction to that?
Oh, yeah. It was super awkward. Some people were like, oh, no.
They're like, what? What's happening
So I went out and I said.
Your family's in the audience?
My parents, my grandma, my brother. Yeah.
Good Lord.
So, and a bunch of my friends. And some people knew what was going to happen. Like my parents, obviously. I told them beforehand, and my friends and stuff. But I just told the audience, I said, listen, my date's going to arrive in about 20 minutes, and we're going to get to know Reagan. And the reason I say we is because I have also never met Reagan.
And your parents were in full support of that? Like, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a show. Like, it's not, in my head, it wasn't a date. It wasn't like a real.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because it's a show. You know, we're going to do a thing. It's an experimental thing. And I had someone waiting in the. So I'll walk you through the thing. When people came in the audience, we put an X on half of their hands. Okay. And then I said, if you have an X on your hand, you need to go back to the lobby. Because I'm going to meet Reagan outside, and we're going to stand in line and buy tickets to this show. So, because then if everyone's already in there, they were the last ones to get in, whatever. You know, so we are walking into. We're in line, and they're just rechecking. They're like handing their tickets over and rechecking in, getting sat in the seats they were already in. There's 2 seats in the front row. We walk in. We're not even the last ones to walk in. I planned that too for 2 other couples to walk in behind us. So we're not just sitting down and all of a sudden it's like, well, now I'm glad these 2 were here.
So you had a little bit of time to introduce yourself.
I was
say
like
a couple things.
Well, so like we're sitting there, and I was like, have you been to a show here before and stuff? So then I had to get her mic'd up. I had to get us with microphones because I knew we were going to be on stage. So the host of the show comes out, and you can obviously see the cameras. It's kind of like these.
Yeah.
Like you can see them. They're not hidden. And so the host of the show comes out and was like, hey, you're going to see a stand-up show tonight. By the way, we're recording this. So we want to get some good audio. So, make sure your phone's on silent. Don't go to the bathroom in the middle of someone's set, obviously. And also, we want to get a few audience laughter individuals to mix into the audio to give it a full sound. Are there any volunteers who'd be willing to wear a microphone? And I had 2 other people raise their hands, and then I was like, oh, we will. And so
and her thought is,
and she's like, the host is explaining it. So her thoughts was like, okay. She's not thinking anything different about putting a microphone on. So then 2 techs come over and put microphones on. And I also had 2 techs go to the other people who raised their hands so that she's not suspicious. Because now there's a couple people in the audience wearing mics. So she has no idea.
Oh my goodness.
And so then I had 2 of my friends do stand up. So he said, hey, welcome Tom Gray. And Tom comes out and does 5 minutes of stand up. And then Tom went off, and then he said, hey, welcome Nick Nichols. And Nick walks out and does stand up. And I was like, oh, that's my friend, And then the host comes out afterward and is like, all right, are you guys ready to see your headliner tonight? Would you welcome Jaron Myers?
Wait, who does she think the headliner is? Does she know?
No.
Or you just
she
invited
just
her
thought we were going to a comedy show. So she didn't know.
She didn't even asked.
I told her my friend was on the show, which was the second one. And I was like, oh, that's my friend.
So she wasn't like, is this Jim Gaffigan?
She wasn't any. No. She wasn't. Because it's like a small. She just thought it was a local Springfield show.
Yeah.
So, and the dinner table is just on stage the whole time. Like my friends are just performing in front of it. And so it's just sitting there. And so I get up and I do 7 minutes of stand up, which is the right amount of time because the audience knows that I'm about to pull her up there. She's got no idea. So I'm doing stand up and the audience is like, come on, dude, like pull her up there already. Mm-hmm. But she's sitting there. I wanted to get the right amount of tension because the audience, I can feel them getting a little more tense where they're like, because they're laughing at the jokes, but they're kind of like, ha, 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 just go on with the show. We want to see what happens.
It's like when your friend's going to propose and you're like,
and they're just kind of like,
we just want to see the ring.
Right. But she has no idea that's about to happen. So I wanted to give her the amount of time for her to sit there and go, ha, 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 ha. And then in her head, she's like, did he invite me to his own show? Like, this guy invited me to his own comedy show. Like, I wanted it to be just long enough. And then when I felt the tension was right is when I was like, I'm on a date right now. And then I said, Reagan, would you like to join me on stage for dinner?
Okay, but in that moment,
Right.
you're asking Reagan up onto the stage, and that's the first time where she's not just sitting being a bystander to
No.
everything that's happening. And so now there's this moment where what if she just says, nope?
Right.
Or she runs
So
out.
one of my friends was in the lobby
What was his
with
name?
with flowers. My friend Lauren.
Okay.
She was in the lobby.
Oh, okay.
With flowers.
Okay.
Waiting in case this, because I didn't know anything about this girl.
Okay.
The only thing I knew was that we were friends on Facebook. That is it. And
So Lauren's waiting for her
here's a
run out.
detail I forgot to tell you. I sent that message to 21 girls. So I didn't choose Reagan.
Okay.
I messaged.
But if Reagan's listening, it was just her.
No, she knows.
Oh,
Let
okay.
me tell you, she knows. Okay, so
She probably lets you hear it.
no. Okay, so
Oh.
I sent a copy paste message to every girl I knew I had never met on Facebook, and like I told you, I was a thirsty kid, so I just friend requested these girls, right?
Yep.
So I send, hey, I know that we don't know each other. I'm just supposed to go to a comedy show with a date on Monday. Would you want to go with me? And I just copy paste to 20-something girls. Reagan was the first person to respond. Out of whatever 20-something, right? Several of them responded. A lot of them just didn't.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious
So,
how many girls are responding to this random Facebook
I think I
friend.
got
I mean, for anybody
I
listening,
think I got like 6 or 7 responses. No, I sent a follow-up message the next day. I said, hey, I was just doing this show. I hope that, sorry. Because I also understand from a girl's perspective, like it is awkward to get a DM or whatever.
Right.
But I definitely have a reputation around Springfield now. And I know because Reagan was in college at the time, and 3 days after the date, she was in class, and one of my Facebook ads had popped up on another girl's Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And she shows her friend, she goes, this guy messaged me and asked me on a date this weekend. And 3 other girls in the class said, me too. And Reagan, sitting there, knowing why, went, oh my gosh, me too. Didn't tell him. Was just like, oh my gosh, what a sleazy guy. Like I had just messaged all these girls. Anyway, so she was just I knew nothing about her. I didn't know, I just knew we were friends on Facebook, and I messaged her. So she could have left when I said, would you like to join me for dinner? So we had someone with flowers in the lobby. If she had run out, then they would have handed the flowers. I would have obviously followed and been like, hey, listen, we weren't trying to make fun of you. I just wanted to do an experiment. Here are some flowers. I had like a Starbucks gift card in there as well of like, feel free to leave. Totally. I gave her the flowers at the end of the night. But she didn't. She sat down at dinner, and the host of the show, the guy that was out there like, guys, we're recording, and would you welcome your headliner? He was the waiter. So he comes back with an apron on later. And so that's why he walks out, and the audience is like, oh, okay, all right. So it was fun. We ate the whole dinner in front of everybody, and then
and now is Reagan in
and
your
now
life?
3 years later we're still going on dates, so it worked
That's
out.
amazing.
Which wasn't the plan. I'm a little mad.
Yeah, because was your plan you weren't just going to do this bit one night.
I was going to do a tour of this.
This was your whole tour.
I wanted to figure out how to do this in other cities. I wanted to figure out, like we passed the Orlando improv stuff over here, right?
For sure, yeah.
I wanted to figure out how to partner with them so that I could roll in. They would find me a date, and then we could just do the same thing. So I had
be Jaron Myers blind date.
Yep.
And people show up and they get to watch you on a date.
Yes.
Which is genius for any. I feel like any.
Nobody do
comedian-
it. Stop. I own the idea. Don't be like, it's genius. I mean, other comedians should do that. Don't do that.
it's not like people aren't ripping your ideas on TikTok.
Anyway, that's a different topic. Yeah.
Yeah, and to those people,
But yes,
just
to those people,
is
quit
that
it.
Is that quit it, or do you like that?
I don't like it. No, comedy doesn't work the same way as music does. It's not like a cover.
So it's not like if I create the Macarena and everybody's doing the Macarena, I'm like, my dance has made it. Your video,
right?
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work the same. Comedy doesn't work the same way because once you've heard a joke, you've heard the punchline. It's kind of like there's a whwhole series of videos where a magician was revealing how magicians do the tricks, and so then you can't watch a magician do that trick then,
right?
Because the whole
your
time you're
response
like,
is,
I know how it works. Yeah,
yeah.
and it's
Here,
like,
give me the cards, I'll do it too.
right. So anyway, yeah. At the end of the date, I dropped Reagan off, and she left her wallet in my car. So the next day, I go out to my car. There's her wallet in the passenger seat, which is a smooth move, right? Because I got to return the wallet that day. But now that I've been dating her for 3 years, I realize that she did not do that on purpose.
Oh, that was just accidental.
She's forgetful. So she just accidentally left her wallet, and it has worked out, So we've been dating for 3 years now.
That's phenomenal.
It's wild, man. It's fun.
So the other night you had mentioned about partnering with churches in communities, bringing comedy into those communities.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
So a lot of what I want to do is I do Christian comedy, but not Christian comedy, if that makes sense. So I don't do like VeggieTales jokes, and I don't go up and be like, communion's weird. Because, and the main reason is because I just realized, because I was on staff at a church, and our whole vision was a safe place to find and follow Jesus, right? And so by doing that work at a church, I realized, because I would invite a lot of friends, and I would do work at Starbucks, and I'm obviously a comedian, so a lot of my friends are comedians, and I was always trying to get them to come to church with me, and I realized that no one was accepting that invite. And it didn't matter how close I got to them. There was something, it wasn't that I wasn't good enough friends with them. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
right. It's like a best friend.
It wouldn't matter how close I got to them. That wasn't the obstacle. The obstacle was that they just weren't going to step foot in a church. And I'm in the Bible Belt, so I don't know how. Well, I know how universal that is, but it's very common in the Bible Belt that a lot of people grew up with pretty negative experiences in the church or from a Christian in their life. And so it didn't matter how much I invested in a person. If my goal was to get them to come to church, then I was just never going to reach that goal. And so, that wasn't my goal, but you know what I'm talking about. Like,
right.
I would have these friendships with people, and I would say like, hey, I lead worship at this church, and no pressure to come hang out, but if you got nothing else going Saturday night or Sunday morning, like, come with me. And they were like, yeah, we can do lunch after. You're like, okay, cool. I'll do it. I'll 100%,
Yeah.
But they just weren't going to accept the invite to a church. And so I think a lot of churches are doing an event with the hope that they're going to draw people in. So a lot of churches will try to book a comedy show, and they'll treat it like an outreach event. And they'll be like, well, if we can just get this, I think this was really common in the 2000s too, is if we can make church cool, if we can do the right giveaways, and if we can do like a big Christmas show, if we could do whatever it is, then we can get people into the building, and then they'll come back.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Michael Jr. in a church.
Right. And I do church shows,
but
right?
I'm sure the whole audience were people that were also there on Sunday morning.
Right. That's the thing, is that the people who are going to come to a church are people who are already comfortable with the idea of walking into a church. So my vision for what I want to do is I want to create opportunities where you can invite your friend to something where it's a clean show, so you can bring your whole family, but also you're going to have an opportunity to invite a friend who may not know the hope of Jesus. And I share my story in the show. I share that, listen, like, I almost took my life, and I have the reason I laugh every day until my abs hurt. And I know that right now you're like, what abs? Okay, not the point. But
I have no room to judge, okay?
But the reason that I have joy and hope is because of Jesus. And so I share that in my show. And so I want an opportunity to do that with people who are just not going to step into a church. So they might not accept the invite to a Sunday service. They might not. You could be giving away a $10,000 huge IMAX TV to put in their house, and still some people would go, I'm just not going to go there.
So does that make you not partner with a church, or does that make you find a different venue?
So what I would hope to do is, because the reason I want to partner with a local church is that if I just rent a venue and go do a show, then I go home the next day. So like, I'll do the show and I'll talk about my story and I'll say, hey, listen, if you resonate with that, like, this is where I found hope. But what I would love to do is partner with churches. Let's have a venue that's not your church. Let's have a building outside of that, so it's a common space. Because if you're inviting a friend to your church, they might not do that. But if you invite them to a local theater or a place where comedy already happens, like they know that that's just a comedy show, then they're much more likely to accept that invite, right? And I would love to have a place to point those people who do come to my show, and I say, hey, if that resonates with you, if that's something that you're interested in, like, I'm going to go home tomorrow, but there's this community here who would love to talk with you. And they're out here in the lobby, or they're out here outside, or they would love to just introduce themselves and talk with you and answer any questions you might have. Because I want to be able to set someone else up to not find a church home, right? But I want to help them find friends who will love them and care for them and nurture that faith. And so I'm not looking to get them to your Sunday service.
And would you be doing these shows like on a Saturday night, and then you show up that next Sunday, like the next
I've done
day,
that
next
yeah,
morning?
I've gone and spoken
you're
at churches.
Church?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I mean, I wasn't even thinking speaking, just more of
Just
like
at the
you're in
church.
the lobby, so that
Sure.
when people come in, hey, that's
Familiar
the funny
face.
guy that we saw last night. We loved. That's the reason why we came here.
Yeah.
And so you're almost like a greeter.
Sure. Yeah.
Is that what your thought is? Or?
I've done that before. But if I'm doing, I've done like a Friday night show and I just fly home on Saturday, or I go on to the next city or do whatever. But yeah, I mean, my goal is, I think a lot of church events can center on filling your building. And I just become so uninterested in that. Like, what I want to do is I want to connect people to the truth of Jesus. I am more interested in introducing people to Jesus and connecting them to people who will walk with them through that than I am of just introducing someone to the flow of church. Like, because, so for example, my girlfriend, when we started dating, she was she was in a spot where she's like, I believe in a God. And I've heard about Jesus and I pray, but I don't really know what that looks like. Now, what Reagan didn't need was, okay, great. So the prescription for that is to go to one service a week and, go in there, listen to the message, and then just reflect on that, and you're going to grow. What she needed was friends. What she needed was people who cared about her enough and would ask questions and get to know her more than just, hey, are you reading your Bible every day? Are you serving at church?
What's the answer outside of them coming to a comedy show? What can churches be doing that is not just, well, if we do more of Sunday morning or more lights, more lasers?
I guess for me, the central part of what I hope ministry is for all of us is, like I'm saying, like, I wish I had the capacity to go into a city, do a show, and then personally invest in every person that comes to my show. But I don't have the capacity to do that. And so I would love to partner with churches in the area who you've got multiple people at your church that I could connect these people to that come to my show and they say, I want to know more about that. And we can connect them to people who will call them and check in on them, and more than just like, hey, didn't see you last Sunday, but we'll call on a Tuesday afternoon and be like, hey, just wanted to see how your day's going and be your friend.
Yeah. And it sounds like that the church, Big C church, us as believers just need to step up and not rely on our small group gatherings having to be something of the church. Like, it's okay as Christians to just have a small group of people, your friends, your neighbors, without having to say this is a so-and-so church small group, and without having to have some kind of training that allows me to be a small group leader. You just have your friends over and have some drinks and choose your favorite, Bob Goff book or whatever.
Yeah, when you say drinks, you mean like Mountain Dew and
Code Red.
Code Red. There you go.
Red drinks only.
Yeah, and what you're saying is, so I think that people don't know how to be friends with each other because there always has to be. It doesn't feel productive. It doesn't feel like there's a direction. And so I'm saying that friendship with a motive is just manipulation. Like, that's not a friendship. And that's when 2020 happened, a lot of people realized just how transactional a large part of their life was. When they're shut in, who are the people who genuinely want to reach out and just say, hey, are you handling this okay? And not reaching out to be like, hey, are you handling this okay? And also, You know, like
I need help moving.
Well, it's kind of like being the friend that has a pickup truck, you know, and your friends call and they're like, "Hey, how's it going? Also, you still got that Ford F-150?" You know, and there's a
reason I never bought a truck.
Exactly. There's a reason no one wants to buy a pickup truck, and if you do, you don't tell anybody about it. People are like, "What do you drive?" A Hyundai Elantra. It's a Honda Civic. It's rough, but you know, for real, like if there's a motive, if there's an angle, because love doesn't work an angle. That's not what that is. And so I just hope that we could. That's one of the things that I would like to work on in my life. That's what I hope to get better at is caring for people because they're people.
Yeah, just loving them because they're a person.
That's the bare minimum.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that is kind of your holy discontent, like that churches wanting to just have people come in, you know, on a Sundays, or churches kind of not really doing the evangelizing as much as they're doing the just like building up internally.
Well, what they're evangelizing isn't Jesus. What they're evangelizing is be a church person, be a person who comes to a service and do these things. And not every church, obviously. That's a generalization. Yeah. But I know for me, that was a shift that happened when I was in college. I was at a church where the goal was to get more people at church. And if we weren't, then we were dying. And if we were growing, then we were growing in numbers. That's what that meant.
Yeah.
And I loved the church I was on staff at in Springfield. And it's still my home church. Because growth wasn't about like more people in seats. And yeah, it does. I don't want to be a part of entertaining Christians and just creating an environment where it's like, oh, we all came together and we all do the right things and say the right things and read the right things and this is who we are. I want to be a part of what are we providing an opportunity for someone to encounter the living God?
Yeah.
Because if it's just about a program, I'm not interested.
Yeah, and I mean there's so many great things out there that are going on.
Yes.
And it's like they're not as advertised. You can't just Google search Justin's upper room that meets like in a small part of town, or and I feel
there's
like
a guy that I know who brews his own beer in his garage and started a group of guys who want to learn how to brew beer, and so they'll do that, and then just over a few beers they just talk and hang out afterward, and that's his weekly highlight. That's what he looks forward to.
And they just read brews.
He brews, yes,
he brews only.
Yeah. That's what they.
Yeah. But I mean, like, because that is the whole reason we started Young Married Christian, was because my boss James,
and people don't need another podcast to listen to.
Exactly, and that's what we said. Look, they don't need another podcast. What should we make?
A podcast.
Podcast.
You understand when I'm messing with you, but like. But if the purpose of the podcast is just to get listeners, then that's not what you're doing. That's what That's what I was saying, was that you're not doing this to be like, hey guys, here's more content.
Exactly. But for us, like our holy discontent, and honestly the whole reason for us starting this podcast is the Orphan Crisis in America. Mm-hmm. I look at my screen to tell you this stat. There's roughly 400,000 foster kids in the United States today. Now, there's also the same number of churches in America as well. So about the same number of foster kids in America and churches. So imagine if we had every church, one family, they stepped up into foster care or adoption. Imagine the gospel impact we could have.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've made it easy. So whether it's just wanting to learn, maybe you want to partner, participate, whatever it is, your level of what you want to do to help this out. If you text freedom, the word freedom, FREEDOM, to the number 833-370-1610, we'll actually get you started down that path to where we can see if we can do something about that. That's what we're fired up about.
Yeah.
That's why we flew you down.
Yeah.
That's why we wanted to hang out with you the whole time you're down here. Not just that. I mean, we love you.
What will they get if they text the number? What kind of resources? So, like, if I'm a person looking to foster.
Yeah. So we have partnered with Lifeline Children's Services.
Okay.
So when you text that number, that's going to connect you with them, and then they're going to actually be the ones that's connecting. It made sense to,
because it's something I want to do. Like I've told every girl I've ever dated, like, hey, listen, adoption or fostering is like gonna happen.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
I genuinely didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
I have told every girl that of like, hey, if that's not on your radar, then this ain't for you. You don't get this hot stuff.
And why is that something that is a passion for you?
One, I want to make sure that any girl that I, am potentially gonna marry. That sounds like I'm gonna marry multiple girls. That's not what I mean. You know what I meant? Like,
we understand.
I wanted to make sure pretty early on that, it was a priority to care for those that can't care for themselves, and to use the resource that I had. Because I grew up middle class and privileged, and it's a priority because I don't like that statistic. I don't like the 400,000 kids. Because, how foster care system works. They bounce around from thing to thing, from home to home. And I think it's really important. One of the biggest things for my life was my mom was a single mom until I was 6. And when she married my dad, we did the whole adoption process, and he wasn't my stepdad. He was my dad. He is my dad. I says, what? He's still here. But that was a big deal for me. I just remember that being we did the adoption process, and I remember going to the courthouse, and it was cool because there was a judge and all that stuff. But I remember that meant something, even when I was 6, of that's my dad. And every Father's Day I'm reminded, there was someone who walked out, but there was a guy who, my mom was 22 when she had me, which means my dad was 21 when I was born. And so my dad was my age when he married a single mom. And I'm 27 and I lose my phone charger all the time, So I couldn't imagine, I straight up couldn't imagine stepping into that. And he did. And that it just meant so much to me then and now that I want to do that. I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of stability for someone else.
For sure.
And so it's been a priority for me. And I want to make sure I want to make sure a girl knows that going into it. So it's not just do you want to do this? And she's like, forget them kids. And the reason I ask what happens when they text that number is that the reason a lot of people don't is because they don't know where to start. And they don't know what to do. So there's a church in Alabama, which I'll connect you to as well. But he was explaining to me that their biggest hurdle of getting new parents to foster was that they would always say we don't know anybody else who's doing it. We don't see it be successful. They Google it and they just hear horror stories of it not working out, of things being way more difficult than it is. And it really goes back to the community thing that we talked about before, is that a lot of people might try to get into fostering or adopting, and then when it gets difficult, they don't know who to call. They don't know anyone else who's doing it. And so that's what I think is really important about organizations like that, is that that's the person they call. That's the organization that will help them and resource them, not only just with here's a pamphlet of what to do, but also here are other parents who are in the same situation who are stepping out and doing this as well, and building that community. And so I think that's again, it's more than a program of hey, do this 10-step thing and that's how life's going to work out. We need people to call when things are difficult and when things are out of our ability. And I think that's what a lot of people avoid or are afraid to step into fostering, is because of that.
Yeah. And I know that for me, God's been tugging at my heart for quite some time.
Yeah.
I did a mission trip in Myanmar, and you're just surrounded by all these orphans. And then from that to even just seeing the movie about it was Instant Family.
Oh my gosh, I loved it.
Amazing.
Hated
movie,
watching it with my girlfriend.
But man, it was
don't watch that with if you're in a relationship. Okay, don't watch that together unless you're both already on board because we watched that together. We're not married yet. We watched that together, and she's crying at the end, right? And she just looks at me you want to start a family tomorrow?
Oh, yeah. Because, that's what you want to do after you watch it. And, from that to even like my fiance Ashley, her brother and his wife, they are a foster family. So we've only been dating less than 2 years, and I've already seen multiple kids like coming through that house, and you get to see these kids, meet these kids, and you just see like, oh my gosh, like there's a need, because if it's not for families like her brothers Ryan and Deborah, doing that, then these kids are just in the system without a family, or in a situation with a family situation that's not good. And so like I feel like God keeps pulling on my strings. And so when James brought this idea to me, which it was ironic because in the Bible, it's literally like James, the book of James, that talks about.
He wrote it.
I think he might have been the author of James. And I'm like, whoa, like,
I don't know.
God's
Do we know
telling
how
me
old
through
he
James,
is?
yeah. But I think that in all of that, I'm thinking to myself, okay, like, is this a calling for me? Like, is this what God's put in my heart? And I remember thinking, what do I do? Because my local church that I attend, they're not talking about it.
Sure.
And
you don't know where to start. You don't know what to do.
Exactly. So even this, like myself, like I looked into their stuff, and I mean, I never even knew that there was such a service as being able to create a system at your local church where you can have those families that have either adopted or fostered, or even they're pregnant and they're not sure if they want to keep the baby or not. You can actually have set up groups where you can just pray for those people. And it's crazy because the rock climbing gym I go to, I'm talking to guys and girls that have fostered and adopted. I would have never known that until I bring up the conversation when they're like, so what do you do for a living? I'm like, well, I'm starting up this podcast called Young Married Christian, and this is what our mission is. And they're like, oh, yeah, we've got a little girl, or, oh, yeah, we got, and you're like, wow, there's a lot of people that are doing this. And it would be nice to, if maybe I'm not called to adopt myself, maybe I'm called to just partner with those families, to resource them. Yeah, because a lot of people think that it's all or nothing. Yeah.
You don't got to save the world. You don't got to save the world,
Jesus
but
already did it.
You're right.
Yeah.
You don't got to save the world, but like you said, you wouldn't know that they had fostered unless you had those conversations. And that's really what I was trying to get to before, is that the heart of community is getting to know those things and getting to know someone beyond we work at the same place, or we go to the same church, or we go to the same rock climbing gym, or whatever.
Right.
And people think of ministry or, loving Jesus as these categories of, well, I sing worship songs and I read my Bible and I serve at church and, and that's what I do. But really there are so many opportunities that God is moving in friendships like that, where you get to talk to parents who are fostering, you get to talk to couples who are considering it. You get to talk to moms who don't know if they're going to keep their child or not. And you say, hey, there's options. There are things we can do. And I'm here to I'm not here to get you from point A to point B. I'm here to walk with you along this whole journey. And that's a really big thing.
Oh, but okay, so you say this, and these couples out there, there's got to be some amazing ones in your life, I'm sure, that are just killing it. And you see them, you're like, they're so happy. One day I hope Reagan and I can be like that. Do you have those couples? Who are they, and what is it about them? What do you see anything that they're doing that maybe some of our listeners can be like, oh yeah, we'll add that to our list?
First of all, absolutely avoid doing this with anybody on social media. So if you're right now thinking of couples, think of couples you tangibly actually know in person.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'm not thinking.
Right. I want to make sure, because that's one of the things that I thought. I was like, oh yeah, there's like playing, but
no. I'm saying in your life, the people that no one's giving credit.
But I wanted to clarify that too. I wanted to, and even if it's like, it doesn't have to be famous people. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. I'm talking about the Dave and Pam in your life that no one knows.
But I'm saying, like, don't compare it to the Instagram version of the people that you know. Don't look at your friend's Facebook page and be like, wow, I wish I had a marriage like that. Okay? I'm saying, like, right now, if you're listening, the couples that you know in real life, right? So one of the couples that I look up to is my pastors, Jeremy and Leanne. They're phenomenal people, very different personalities. And I love the way that they joke about how different their personalities are. One time we were at the church. This was when I was on staff there, and it was raining, and their daughter had just turned 16 and got her license, and she was driving by herself in the rain. And Leanne is just looking out the window, and she's like, she has not answered her phone. And Jeremy just goes, should we worry about it?
Are they doing this?
Yeah, he did that to make fun of her, you know?
Okay.
But, like, they're able to go, and she goes, you're right, I'm being. But, like, they're able to, and that's what I said before, is that, you know, she can own that part where she's stressing too much and outwardly leaking out her anxiety, and he can lightly kind of joke because she can acknowledge that about herself of like, oh yeah, there's not me worrying about this isn't going to help her get home in the rain, you know, and I loved watching that interaction. They probably don't remember that at all, and but that was one of the things that I like watching. I like watching them interact. And couples that can own their own stuff and are confident in themselves, because I was thinking about this the other day. The whole thing about intimacy, the reason that following Jesus is hard in a relationship is because I thought about this when Reagan went to church with me on Sunday, and we don't go to church together often because we live in different cities.
Okay.
And I remember sitting there, I'm like, man, it's harder for me to get into worship today because I just snapped at her in the car on the way to church. So it's harder for me to raise my hands, and because in my head, I'm like, if I'm getting into worship right now, you know, I haven't apologized to her for snapping in the car yet. And so it's hard to go, oh, I see my friends doing this, because I think so much of the stuff that I know my friends do in their relationships, because we'll talk about it in private, but a lot of the stuff that I want to emulate is the stuff that I don't see. It's the conversations in before we went to church where I was like, listen, I'm sorry I did that. And that's not something that I will ever see a couple do. But that's what I want in my relationship, is the ability to be humble in front of somebody, to be vulnerable and say, I made a mistake.
Owning your crap.
Owning your crap and knowing that she's not going to go, yeah, you did, dude. You know,
that's trust.
That's what so it's hard to be like, oh, well, those are the things I want to emulate. But that's stuff that I saw my parents do. I saw my dad, especially, we grew up, he grew up in a home where he's one of like 7 siblings, and he's the only one that's not in jail.
Okay.
And so healthy relationships was not, and my mom grew up in a broken home, and so arguments weren't small. It was kind of like we would all get frustrated and we would push it down, and then we'd all blow up or whatever. And so we went to family counseling, all these things, and I watched as my dad started to like apologize.
You were how old when this counseling started?
My sophomore year of high school, 2010. So I was 16, and so I was going through that time of like, I hate these people as my parents, you know, but we were all going through family counseling, and something that my parents do now that, you know, I almost said like I wish we would have done all along, but we had to learn this was my dad will come into my room and say, hey, I'm sorry I did that. And he's not like looking for me to be like, I'm sorry that I broke the rules. He's just saying, I'm sorry I reacted that way. And it wasn't with an expectation that I would own my crap too, you know? Because as soon as we're holding it over like, hey, I'll own my crap if you own yours. That's not owning your crap.
Right.
You know? And so once my parents started to do that with each other and with us, especially they started to do that directly with us. That's something that brought us a lot closer together. Like just this past weekend, it was Easter weekend at my parents' house, and we're playing baseball in the yard. I told my brother not to do something because I knew that it would hurt, and he accidentally did the thing. Like I told,
what was the thing?
My nephew was pitching to me, and I was catching, and my brother grabbed a bat. And I wasn't wearing I wasn't like wearing a face mask or knee pads or anything. I was just with a glove.
So
like,
you tell him, don't hit me with the bat.
Well, I told him, I said, don't swing at these pitches because you're going to foul one off and hit me. I said, so don't actually swing at it. And then he did. And then it fouled off straight into my kneecap. Ouch. And it hurt real bad. And I said some words. And then I blew it, and I yelled at him, and my 6-year-old nephew's right there watching it all happen,
As you're yelling your favorite scripture.
As I'm just like, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. I love the first family of the Bible. And so, but I had to go inside and say, I reacted really poorly, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think a lot of families out there, especially in the church, would kind of hear you saying counseling and be like, oh, that's only when you've hit rock bottom. Yeah. And maybe even rock bottom, still don't go to counseling.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's getting better.
I feel like the stigma around it is going away a little bit.
It for sure is.
I 10,000% suggest a counselor for anybody. I go to counseling regularly still. Because it's not something that is like, oh, I only go there when I need it.
It's you or you and Reagan.
It's like brushing your teeth. You don't brush your teeth when they're starting to rot and fall out.
That's so true. That's good advice.
Somebody
you
brush your teeth so that they don't.
Right. Somebody need to hear that.
Somebody need to put that on a pillow. I'll tell you what. Somebody.
So. You said you go to counseling just by yourself, or it's you and Reagan going to this counseling together?
We haven't done couples counseling yet.
Okay.
And so we'll do that, and when we get closer to marriage, kind of thing.
Oh, that's exciting! Something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Hey, when you marry me, we can start counseling.
Yeah. Hey, that's our counselor now. Yeah, that's right. No, I've had the same counselor since I was in high school. So like we started family counseling around that same time. I started counseling. I have an anxiety disorder, and so I've had a counselor for I guess 11 years now that I see regularly. And it helps to have someone who's not in the situation or in your real life to counseling is more than just like spill onto somebody, because for me, I didn't have the tools to healthily navigate my anxiety. I didn't have the tools to, when the Bible says renewing your mind, I talked about it being a practice, right? I talk about the practice of finding joy and those practical steps. That's what a counselor helped me form and helped me find was when I'm anxious, intentionally do these things. And that was something that I think I went into counseling thinking this person was going to be like, okay, well, here's what you need to do. And that's not at all what it was. It was first of all led with empathy, and then it was actual psychologically proven things to do in those moments. And so that was stuff that I needed. That's greatly helped me. And then my girlfriend also goes to counseling. And so it just helps to have someone you're not going to run into at the post office to bounce things off of and to be completely open with, because like I said, vulnerability is also a practice. It's also a muscle you have to exercise. And it is really hard to be vulnerable with someone who is there, it's hard to be vulnerable with Jesus in front of someone who did see you freak out the night before.
Yeah. And you're saying a counselor has to be someone different than the guy that's discipling you, or your pastor, or somebody that you know very well. Like that's something different. Like,
sure. Well, first of all, a counselor is a trained professional. Like it's not.
And they could be professionally trained in that.
Sure.
But you're saying there should be something different there. It shouldn't be.
I don't see my counselor as like, I have mentors. That's a different role.
Different.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
just want to make that very clear.
Right. Right. Like I've got older men that I meet with and have breakfast with or coffee with or whatever, and I talk to about my life, and I'm vulnerable with them. But a counselor is someone who is an actual psychologist.
Yeah. It sounds like your counseling was something tangible that your dad had a big impact on your life in a positive
whole family
way.
Yeah.
Let me flip that script and say, is there anything that you would do different than what your dad did, or your mom and dad?
Yeah,
something different than your parents did that you want to do once you have kids.
Yeah, we all think that though, right?
And
like
you're
we're all
"You know
like,
what?
oh, I'm gonna do that better.
My kids aren't gonna scream and
Dude.
throw a fit for that toy."
For real. I mean, seriously, we all think we're gonna handle it better. And when I look back, like,
And then you're just handing $20 to
well,
your
and that's what
kid.
I was the oldest sibling, and I think, do you have siblings?
Yes, I have 2.
Okay, older, younger.
One older, one younger.
Okay, so I'd be curious if your older sibling is jealous of you, because I'm jealous of my brother, in that by the time my brother transitioned out of high school into college, into like being an adult, my parents had already done that and been through that, and so they were like, cool. But for me, that's a tough transition. That's really hard to do, because you do have to, and the same thing with my parents, like, eventually I have to stop seeing my parents as the end-all be-all voice in my life, because for 20 years they are that, right? And then now as an adult, they aren't, and that's a tough transition, not just for me, because I have to be able to disagree and to be able to set boundaries and say I'm an individual person, but I also now, didn't then, but now I understand that's really difficult for them, because not that they have control, but really, especially for my parents who struggle with control, to be able to give that up and allow me to be an individual person was difficult. So,
yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people listening are in that 20 to 30 year range, and they're probably trying to figure that out. How do I go from my parents being the end all be all, over my life to, what's this adult relationship
and I would
look
be
like?
interested. I don't know. Again, I'm speaking as a person who's not married. I'm 27 and not married, because it seemed easier for my friends that got married younger. Not that you should, but I'm saying, like, when my friends got married at 22, 23, marriage obviously means you're an adult. Go do your thing.
Is it marriage or is it kids?
See, that's what I'm wondering. Like, do married people without children still feel like their parents don't treat them like full adults yet? And it is a weird transition and a different time, and I hope that I can remember these things when it is time for my kids to leave the house, because there was a lot of pain that happened in that time where, I had my first serious girlfriend and we had talked about marriage and my mom didn't think I was old enough yet. And that became a fight. Or I had my first, the time that I wanted to leave the church I grew up at and go to a different church. And it was kind of like, well, is that because your girlfriend says this about this? Or is that because you actually think that?
Oh, man.
And I think college students feel this too, of like, oh, is this because that liberal education at your school? Or is this because, and I hope that I remember that when that's my season. But I probably won't. And that's another thing I've learned too. I've learned to have a lot more empathy and understanding toward my parents, of like, they've never had a 27-year-old before. And so, yeah, we're all going to mess up. And that's part of owning my crap too, is I just go, oh, I messed up a lot. And obviously we are all people just trying to figure this out. They're trying to figure out how to raise a kid.
Yeah. Was there anything in that house that they did that, maybe something that they did that like created fun for the house, or maybe something that's in your head that you're like, oh, when I become a parent, this is what I'm going to do to make sure that I'm building a fun environment? Because I know that like the typical thing is, family game night or watching Wheel of Fortune. That was what my family did. That was like how we bonded, was Wheel of Fortune and American Idol, and Survivor.
Yeah.
But is there anything that you have in your mind? Because I've seen friends, moving from Indiana and Kentucky area down to Orlando, like, people live very differently down here.
Sure.
And it's outside the box. Like, you go into a living room that doesn't have a television, and I'm like, what do you do in here? And they're like, oh, well, we have this stage, so when our friends come over, they actually will just get up there and play music, and we just, like, hang out. And there's, like, live music, and there's a giant projector screen that's, like, showing Disney nature videos or something.
Yeah.
And we've got magicians around here doing magic, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I've never thought of this.
As far as like my family goes, I think one thing my parents did really well was they championed my I don't want to call them hobbies, but like whenever I wanted to be a drummer and be in a band, my parents got me an electric drum kit because they didn't want to listen to a real one. And so
that is encouraging and also genius of them.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they were not dumb.
My parents bought an acoustic drum set. Yeah.
And then you're not allowed to play it.
You
and
can't.
Yeah. So anyway, but that was one thing my parents did really well was I was in a really bad band when I was like a sophomore in high school.
Shout that band out.
No. And we made bad music, but my parents supported it. My parents championed my creative outlets. And because of that, it gave me a lot of confidence to be creative and to be imaginative and to try things. And when I was a kid, I straight up wanted to be a ventriloquist, and my parents bought me puppets.
And you just had puppets in your room?
Not the creepy ones. Not the creepy, like, ones.
I now know why you're terrified of anything scary.
Anything scary is that they was there all the time.
Okay,
but like,
so they supported what you wanted.
I was
to
in a
do.
model trains, and me and my dad started to build one of those big model train things together. They just created opportunities for me to do those things, and so and I don't even know if that requires like a financial investment. Like when I wanted to be a pitcher in baseball, my dad set up a thing in our front yard that I could throw the balls into, and we found these like styrofoam balls that worked the same as baseballs that I could throw toward the house that wouldn't hurt the house, obviously, but they'd bounce back, so that way I didn't have to have someone, And so like he kind of figured out those things. Like, here, go practice in the yard. Here you go. Like they championed my initiatives, and that gave me a lot of confidence as an adult to do what I do now. Because I guess I've just always assumed things will work out, But I think that's one thing is they gave me permission to do those things.
That's amazing.
And so I'm glad they did that because now I give myself permission to do those things. Right now on my back porch, I have an inflatable hot tub. You knew I was going to bring it up. Yeah.
Because it's a business expense.
It's a business expense. We recorded a podcast in it. But it was one of those things where I was like,
have a lazy river.
Or straight up like a friend was like, they make inflatable hot tubs? And as soon as she said it, I went, I want one of those. And I just looked up and it was just kind of like, I want to make a space for myself. And so I saved up some money. I put some aside, and then I spent a few months putting some money away, and I bought a little TV to put out there and a hot tub, and I just did it because it was one of those things. I was like, it's okay for me to not indulge, but to do something that I enjoy. I have permission to do that for myself.
So many people think that like they put their time into things that they don't actually enjoy. Hustle, hustle, hustle is what a lot of people want.
Mm-hmm.
To think that, hey, this is how I make it big. Just hustle, hustle. But you said something. We're like in the line for the Navi River adventure, and you mentioned something about the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just like something I've heard before biblically. Like you have your own philosophy behind it, and like working from that Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give our listeners just something about that give them permission? Because I think there's so many people that need to hear that.
Yeah. That's something that like radically changed my life in 2017, was beginning to take a Sabbath. Admittedly, in 2020, every day felt like the Sabbath, so I got kind of bad at it.
Amen to that.
But again, it's another thing that's a little bit like a muscle and training yourself to do those things. And so for me, my Sabbath's Tuesday. So Monday night, I put my phone away, put my laptop away in my office. First of all, every night I charge my phone in my office, and I put it away at like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, so I have time before I go to bed to not be. I used to like lay in bed and just be on my phone,
like most Americans.
Dude, I would fall asleep scrolling Instagram or whatever.
Yeah,
and like.
Which is not good for you.
And then and then the alarm is on my phone, right? So I would wake up, turn it off, and immediately check social media. That's how I started my day.
So you're telling people spend the $10 for the old
Get a stupid alarm
clock.
clock, dude. Yeah, 100%. Charge your phone in another room. I have never slept better in my life. I'm not joking. Like I'm not like, I've never slept better in my life. I'm saying I've never slept better in my life, And so I've already do that. And then Monday night around dinner time, I put my phone away. I put my laptop away. I shut it in my office. And I go to dinner by myself or with friends, whatever. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to do an isolation thing. I just go to dinner. And it's usually like an Olive Garden because I'm a guard dog. It's funny. No, I'll go grab dinner, and then I like to read a lot, so I try to create some time. But it's really about creating space to, like the walks, and what Tuesday has become is just one day of a walk. I used quotes for that.
W-O-K?
W-O-K, Panda Express. No, but what I'm saying is being intentional about creating space to see God move. Because one thing about the hustle is that it just doesn't create any space for creativity. It doesn't leave any space for you to breathe. It doesn't really even leave space for you to fail at something. And it totally requires you to produce something. Then your whole life becomes about what you produced that day. And if you didn't produce anything, you feel like a failure. So the Sabbath feels counterintuitive because you're not producing anything. That's literally the point. And the point of not producing something is to remember that your production is not your survival. That your production is not how you make it through the world. That your value and your identity is not a producer. Your value and identity is that you are known, seen, loved, and cared for by Jesus. And so it's not about I just want to have a day off. It's God has given you the Sabbath for you to not to come rolling into it Monday night like, oh my God, thank you, I can finally rest. But to create a space where you are reminding yourself, it's a whole day of yellow. It's a whole day of, oh yeah, God does care for me and see me. God is taking care of me. I don't have to take care of myself. God is meeting those needs, so I don't have to today. God is the producer, the caretaker, the giver, and I am receiving from him. And so instead of rolling into Tuesday oh, thank God I made it, I get to step into Wednesday out of rest. Instead of working to get to rest, I work out of a place of I don't need to produce. I work alongside God to unlock whatever that is that God has put into me, and I create alongside with him instead of creating to get to him. I think it's especially in the society we're living in, it's that's not how you get ahead. It's people think that Chick-fil-A is stupid for closing on Sundays. They're losing out on so much money.
Oh, I've heard it so many times.
Exactly. They're like, dude, if they just opened during the Super Bowl, they'd make, all kinds of stuff.
And in the end, honestly, for me, it does the opposite because Sunday, all I'm doing is thinking of Chick-fil-A so that those next 6 days I'm there every day because I'm this could close at any time.
But more than anything is that your I was trying to remember the Business Insider article I read about. It was not even a Christian thing. It was a business article, right? And they were talking about a stop day, is what they call it. A stop day where you just don't do any work, you don't answer emails, you don't think about work, you train your brain to not think about and be around those things, right? And they said that it can add up to 11 years to your life. Okay, you got a calculator on this thing?
I'm sure we got a calculator.
Let's see if I can remember how to do the math on this because it's pretty incredible. So you take one day off a week every year, right? That's 52 days.
Yep.
Let's say you do that for 80 years, right? How many days is that? So 52 times 80.
That's like 4,000.
4,160.
Okay, so divide that number by 365.
Like 9.
11.39.
So for every day that you take off, you're adding it to the end of your life. So they're saying that by taking a stop day, people live 11 years longer if they do this. So let's say that for your whole life, you take a day off of work. That's 4,000 whatever days, right? If you spread that out, that's 11 years. So for every day you're taking off of work, you're adding it to your life. I don't think that's on it. That was a Business Insider article.
Yeah.
They were like, on average, like the people who take a stop day live 11 years longer on average. I don't think that's a coincidence that many days adds up to 11. That's weird, right? So that feels like it's baked into our DNA. So I think that when you create space to, one, be alone, that gives you the opportunity to own your crap. Right? Because there's no way you can own your stuff without intentional introspection. There's no way. That's one of the things that's appealing about the hustle is that this is what I've produced, so therefore this is what I am. And so because I don't have time, I don't have to sit there and go, why am I doing this?
Yeah, your whole identity is in what you're making,
Yes.
what you're putting out. That is all that is me.
So when 2020 happens and you're no longer able to produce at the rate that you would, so many people last year had an identity crisis, which is why I'm so passionate about community, is that suddenly a lot of people who had their whole identity based on what they could produce couldn't produce anything. And so they had a full-out identity of like, who am I? What am I even doing here? What's the point? Which has created all this animosity. These people were so angry, like, let us go back to work. Let's do this stuff. Let us keep producing, because if I don't do that, then I don't have value. And I think that the reason we saw a lot of Christians do it, sorry, I'm talking fast because I get passionate. Let's preach. The reason the Christians do it is because their identity is what they can do for God and what they can do for the kingdom of God, instead of being a part of the kingdom as far as like, I'm known, loved, and seen by God already. Regardless of what I do, he doesn't need me to do that. Like, he wants to be with me, not he wants me to do something for him.
I think that resonates with me, because a lot of times when you hear testimonies, I feel like it's a lot of, this is the crap that I used to do. So it's like kind of glorifying the crap. Mm-hmm. And then the next part is, and this is all the things that I'm now involved in.
I now do now.
This is now what I am doing for God. Mm-hmm. And it like a lot of times just misses out on the whole point of just the relationship there. And I feel like that if you told that story of, say you and Reagan are mm-hmm. there at your wedding day, and you're telling her your whole story about your love story is mm-hmm. all the girls in the past, and then you go into all the things that you do for her, that's not love.
It's weird.
That's very weird.
Yeah.
And so when you put that into context, and you kind of grasp like God's not looking at you giving gold stars.
Yeah.
He just kind of wants you there.
And a lot of the pain that I put myself through before was pain because I didn't realize that I was already loved and cared for. And so the love of God gives me a confidence that I walk taller and I laugh harder. And so I think to the first question that you asked, if you're a couple and you're struggling with how do we add laughter into this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, lower the bar.
Which doesn't mean lower the bar of who you're dating.
A little bit. No, I'm just kidding. No, but lower, like, the thing is that you're taking yourself so seriously, because oftentimes the times that I take myself the most serious are the times when I am nitpicking myself and I am so critical of myself because I'm sitting here trying to get it right. And the thing that radically changed my life was when I understood that God wasn't like waiting with his thumb over me for me to mess up and then just squash me. That God was waiting for me to quit trying to do it on my own and for me to say, God, I want to be with you as much as you want to be with me. Mm-hmm. And that rest that offers, by going on the walk and looking for the color, by setting aside a whole day to say, this is I'm going to look for that color all day. That's what this whole thing is. What it does is it energizes the rest of your week, that you'll see that popping up more, and you can work from that place of rest. So that way your work isn't tainted by having to produce or having to prove something. But it's fueled by, there's a God who cares for me and knows me. So now I'm free to work out of a place of being loved and not a place of working to get love.
Hey, thank you so much, Jaron, for being here, taking time out of your life to come down and go to Disney, have some fun. But
I was only here for Disney.
That hurts a little.
I felt it in that giggle. You were like,
yeah. So how can our people listening in right now or watching, how can they find you?
First of all, The Blind Date, my girlfriend, you can watch our first date on Amazon Prime.
Go
so
watch
if you've
it.
got that,
it's comedy gold.
You can look up The Blind Date, and that should pull that up. Also, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all that. It's just all at Jaron Myers, and you'll be able to find me on there. I do a podcast that comes out every Tuesday called Things I Learned Last Night. If you are struggling to laugh, please listen to our podcast, because we'll laugh for you. That's the whole thing.
Inject laughter straight in.
Straight up, all we do. If you don't think that I'm funny, right, that's fine, because I sure do. And that's obvious in that podcast. It's just so much laughing and so much hanging. So I think that you'd enjoy it a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, we put stuff out every week, and you can message me on Instagram. If you're a person that like listening to a conversation and you're like, oh, you know, I resonate with that, or I want to hear more about that, or I've got book recommendations out the wazoo. So message me on Instagram. I read all of that. Don't message me mean things though. I don't read those.
Awesome.
Y'all, we hope you loved this conversation. Here at Young Married Christian, we are on a mission to see a gospel-centered home made available for every single child in the foster care system. There are 400,000 kids in the foster care system, and there are 400,000 churches in America. Wow, that is crazy. This is absolutely a solvable problem, and we want to be a part of it. If you want to join us in that mission, text the word freedom to 833-370-1610. 833-370-1610. 833-370-1610.
I just did it.
And another thing you can do that is really helpful is to smash the like button on this video.
Smash it like Satan's face. Crush it like it's Lucifer's head.
It really helps us a ton, so smash that like button, subscribe to this channel.
That's it.
Smash the like button on this video.